A 911 distress call was made after a deranged man showed up to a business establishment looking for his wife. It was evident he had a bone to pick with her.
We have somebody in our building that will not leave, and he's not an employee.
He had discovered something that couldn't wait until she returned home. Once he had her in his sights, a slew of obscene remarks was made. She would attempt to defuse the situation, but unfortunately, it would only escalate to physical assault. Eventually, her husband would come to his senses and leave on his own prior to authorities arriving. But unfortunately, it did not end there. Later that day, after things settled down, the pair would eventually cross paths again and come to somewhat of an amicable agreement that worked for the both of them. Unfortunately, one of them would divert from the plan, leaving a trail of disaster and heartbreak behind. So, what exactly caused the husband to show up to his wife's job in such a fit of rage? And what were the plans that they had agreed upon, and who broke the arrangement? To answer these and other questions, let's take a look at the life events that led up to the tragedy of the Toledo family murders.
And we talked a little bit this morning about Louis Toledo. When did he first come into their life?
4 years before the incident happened.
And do you see him here in this courtroom today?
Yes.
Did you tell us what he's wearing, please?
Black suit and a white shirt. And glasses.
Patterned tie?
Yes.
You told us earlier that you didn't particularly like him when he first came into the family.
No.
If you were to describe their relationship, would rocky be a fair word?
Yes. Yes.
Yessenia Suarez and Louis Toledo met under violent circumstances 4 years prior to this case. They weren't violent towards each other, it was more so the atmosphere. But needless to say, it is quite ironic that the relationship started off with violence involved and ended in the same manner. Yessenia and her younger sister Emily were at a music festival when a fight had broken out. It's unclear if the fight involved Yessenia or if she was just an innocent bystander. However, Yessenia received a blow to the face, causing her to temporarily pass out. A young man noticed her condition and immediately rushed to her aid. He picked her up and brought her over to the nearby EMT for immediate medical attention. That young man was Louis Toledo. From that day moving forward, Yessenia and Louis were inseparable. It's safe to say she developed what we would call hero worship syndrome, where you fall in love with someone who rescued you from a serious to life-threatening scenario. This typically happens with victims who are rescued by men and women in uniform, like firefighters and police officers, but it can also extend to medical staff and even civilians. Within 4 months of meeting, the pair would become exclusive and move in together. Once Yessenia's family learned of the man she had fallen for, their concerns started to grow, and for good reason. Louis was no stranger to authorities. He had quite an extensive run-in with the law, particularly due to his involvement with the gang Latin Kings. Once Yessenia's family learned of his background, they expressed their concerns towards her moving forward with him. However, Yessenia saw the good in him and also encouraged her family, particularly her mother, to give him a chance, as her mother always used to state, quote, "Everyone has a right to change, even if they don't have a good background," end quote. And with that said, her mother had no choice but to take her own advice and allow this young couple to thrive. And that they did. Louis was changing his life for the better, and it was all thanks to his new girlfriend, Yessenia. She was the motivation he needed to be the best version of himself. So, what did that actually look like? Well, for starters, he no longer wanted to be associated with the Latin Kings. So much so that he ultimately would turn on them and testify against them in court for the DA. Anything that reminded him of his life prior to Yessenia, he wanted nothing to do with. You could even say that Yessenia became his hero, and he too fell into the hero worship spell. All Louis was interested in was bettering himself for his newfound family. This would include enrolling into barber school, while Yessenia was also bettering herself by continuing her education and working towards a bachelor's degree in human resources. Finances, though, were another scenario. Things were really tight for the two of them, and not only because they were both enrolled in school, on top of Yessenia holding a steady job, she also had two children from a previous relationship to take care of as well. And although she had Lewis by her side, who welcomed him in as his own, he was struggling to maintain a steady job. So, since he really didn't have anything else going on, they came up with a plan that he would be the stay at home dad while going to barber school, and Yesenia would also be going to school and going to work. And this would also help them to alleviate some of the expenses when it came to childcare whenever Yesenia's mom was not available to watch the kids. Although the Toledo family was suffering financially, they were holding out on hope. Hope that Lewis would get his barber's license soon and be able to generate his own flow of income since the corporate world seemed a little too out of touch for him. But until then, that left Yesenia as the breadwinner at home, which put a lot of strain on the relationship. They would argue about finances all the time and other issues as well, such as the fact that Lewis was not holding up his end of the bargain as the stay at home dad that he promised he'd be. Although Jasenia and her mother were extremely close, reporting the issues that she would run into with Lewis was something she kept to herself. Every relationship has its ups and downs, and not every problem needed to be reported. On top of that, she wanted to give Lewis the opportunity to be the man she knew he could be. Yesenia was due to graduate soon, and she knew that once she had her degree in her hands, their financial issues would be a thing of the past. Everything else would have to fall into place. After 2 years of exclusive dating, the couple would make it official and tie the knots. To further show his dedication to his new family, they would purchase a new home, and Yesenia and Lewis also got baptized. Things appeared to be going on the up and up for this family of four. Lewis loved Yesenia's kids, Talia and Elijah, as his own, and they reciprocated the same love. The Toledo family wanted nothing more but to live a wholesome Christian life. But unfortunately, their relationship with God would be tested, and their new puppet master would be at play. One thing we can all agree on is that a marriage is only as good as the people in it and the efforts given. And unfortunately for the Toledos, one of them would step outside of the marriage. For some time, Lewis started to grow suspicious of Yesenia cheating on him. He wasn't quite sure for how long or with whom, but eventually he would find the smoking gun. Now this brings us to the week of the confrontation at Yesenia's job. During this time frame, approximately 10 days leading up to the confrontation, Yesenia was on a business trip. Now, during said business trip, she left the care of her kids in the hands of her mother, Felicita. Now, this would be strange because she has a husband, they're married, and the agreement was that he would be a stay-at-home dad while she went on to complete her education and work full-time. So why was it that her mother, who also worked full-time, had to take care of the kids for 10 days? What was Lewis too busy doing that he couldn't handle taking care of his own stepchildren? Let's take a look at the testimony of Felicita, Yesenia's mom, for more details.
Was your daughter primarily responsible for earning the money in the home?
Yes.
Was the defendant primarily responsible for child care?
No.
Who was primarily responsible for child care?
Child care, him paying child care?
No, I'm sorry. Let me try again. Was the defendant primarily responsible for watching after Talia and Elijah while your daughter was either working or in school?
Yes.
Was your last contact with your daughter and grandchildren on October 22nd, 2013?
Yes.
I'd like to talk with you about kind of the time, the week maybe, leading up to that day. How much you had seen them, what their frame of mind was, their demeanor was, as things were progressing to October 22nd. How much had you seen them in the 10 days prior?
Every day.
And you told us, well, Yesenia was away on business, that the kids were primarily with you. Did they spend the night with you?
Yes.
Did they come home to your house?
Yes.
Did you take them to school?
Yes.
Did you pick them up from school?
Yes.
So they were entirely in your care while she was gone?
Yes.
Did you spend time with them as a group upon her return from Alabama?
Yes.
Were you aware that she had had an affair while she was gone?
No.
Was your first recognition of severe marital problems on October 22nd, 2013?
No.
But you certainly recognized that there were some that day.
Yes.
On October 22nd, 2013, Lewis decided to make an appearance at Yessenia's place of work. As described earlier in this video, he would confront his wife for cheating on him, which led to a whole scene displayed at her job. But why couldn't he wait until she returned home to have this discussion? The answer would also be found at her job. Lewis chose to confront her there because her secret lover was also a fellow coworker. And apparently, this was not her first time getting caught. And the reason why we know so much information is due to a 911 call that was placed by a female coworker. You can clearly hear a lot of the commotion going on in the background, on top of the information that this employee is giving to the 911 dispatcher about what was occurring at the workplace.
We have somebody in our building that will not leave, and he's not an employee. And apparently he
Have you asked him to leave yet?
Yeah, we have.
What's the address?
It is 735 Primera Boulevard. He's right down the hall.
Okay, you said it's a male?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what Hispanic?
Hispanic.
What is he wearing?
I'm sorry?
What is he wearing?
A black outfit.
And I hear some disturbance in the background.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you because they're having confrontation in front of me now.
Okay, give me 1 second, okay? Let me dispatch this call, okay?
All right, I appreciate it.
Stay on the line with me, okay?
Stay on the line, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's wrong. And it's wrong. And both of y'all deserve each other, man. That's what I'm saying. I just wanted your job to know how you go ahead and go company tricking the whole round with Coworkers. That's not true, man. That is true. And I got some messages to show you, Bobby. I got some messages to show you.
I'm sorry.
It would surely be something different, but you know, I'm not upset about this guy coming here. I'm upset with you telling him that.
Okay. Give me one.
Okay.
Multiple units, Charlie 23, copy your right.
So,
1323. Are there any weapons involved, ma'am?
No, not at all.
Okay.
At least I hope not. Dear God, you're going to break me out in hives.
Next one.
And we have secured doors, and it looks like he's leaving now.
Okay, which way is he leaving?
It looks like he went towards the left, but you can only turn right onto Primera. Right onto Primera, so I don't know if he's going to loop around. It looks like it's a domestic abuse.
Okay, what?
no, the guy is. I'd be very careful when you come next to you. Well, he's saying
Okay. What's your name and phone number? Okay.
All right, and like I said, it looked like he did take off, and it looked like a silver Saturn. I don't know. His wife is here, so she could probably give you more information.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Following the confrontation, Yessenia decided that it was best to go to her mother's house following her shift. But before making her way over to her mother's house, Yessenia would do something that would solidify how she truly felt about Lewis and the future of their marriage. Yessenia wanted to make it clear that she was no longer interested in making this marriage work. These were some of the last words she would ever claim regarding her union with Lewis before the unimaginable would happen.
A Lake Mary cop responds to an office complex in late October. The dash camera points to a parking lot filled with routine while we hear.
We've been having problems. Like in my last weekend, I want to be with him, and ever since then, he's been, harassing me.
In this video, We hear Yessenia speak of their domestic issues.
She put some spyware on my phone to see everything that I do for men, but I do personal stuff and professional business stuff too. He's claiming that I'm having a relationship with one of my coworkers. So he went crazy and he hit me here, right here, literally. He like slapped me on my face.
Did your daughter come to your home that afternoon
On the
on
22nd?
the 22nd?
Yes.
What was her state of mind when she arrived?
She was nervous, scared.
Were her children with her?
They were with me already at the house.
Had you gotten them from school that day?
Yes.
How long was it before the defendant came to join all of you at the house?
My daughter got home around 3:30, or it was around that time. And Louis got home around 6:30, maybe 5, around that time. I know he left around almost 7 while we were talking.
How long do you think he stayed and talked to your daughter?
For about an hour and a half to 2.
So if he left almost around 7, what time do you think he got there?
Got to where? To my house?
To your house? Yes, ma'am.
He got to my house around, I think it was around 5.
Did you ever have an opportunity to overhear or participate in that conversation?
Yes.
What was the general tone and tenor of that conversation?
He was telling me that Jesse had cheated on him, and we were talking about, I told him, why did he hit Jesse? And he started saying he didn't hit her. And I did, and we just went on off, talking conversation. And I used to leave and talk and went inside to cook. I was like in and out checking on the kids.
Was he angry?
Yes, he was.
Was he loud?
Yes.
Was your daughter angry?
She was crying. She was sad.
Was she loud?
No.
At the time of that conversation, did you know that your daughter had asked him for a divorce?
Yes.
How did the conversation at your home end?
And my daughter, after he left.
Well, I'm sorry. How did the conversation between the two of them?
Or them?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, all of a sudden I went to the kitchen, and then when I came back, the conversation was in the garage. And then all of a sudden Jesse come in, and I said, did he leave? But then he wanted a water or something. He came back in. We were eating, and I offered him food anyway, and I gave it to him, and then he left. But Jesse has said they came in an agreement.
And I think you testified a moment ago, but I want to make sure. What time did Mr. Toledo leave your house that night?
Around 7.
Did your daughter immediately leave the house?
No.
And how long did she stay at your house?
Around 8, she left the house. She took a shower. We ate, and then it was around 8 when she left.
Did you try to get her to stay at your house?
Yes.
Did she ultimately leave?
Is that good?
Did she ultimately leave your house?
Yeah, she wanted to sleep on her bed.
You said she wanted to sleep in her bed?
She wanted to sleep on her bed, she said to me.
Is that the last time you ever saw your daughter?
Yes.
Is that the last time you ever talked to your daughter?
Yes.
Is that the last time you saw your grandchildren?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to them again after that?
No.
After stopping by her mom's place, Yessenia felt it was safe to return home and sleep in her own bed, considering she just had the conversation with Louis. But as true crime viewers, we know all too well that in many cases like this, returning home to meet the aggressor, regardless of how calm their demeanor may be, can be the most dangerous decision you make. In the wee hours of the morning, Lewis paid a visit to his neighbor Tashawn. He knocked on his bedroom window asking if he could come outside because he needed a favor. According to his neighbor, Lewis had asked him if he could follow behind him in his wife's car. The unsuspecting neighbor obliged, assuming that maybe one of the cars needed some repairs, which meant that he'd need a way back home after the drop off. But what he found strange was the distance that they were traveling to take the car for upkeep. Why risk the car possibly breaking down or further maintenance when there are plenty of shops nearby? But nonetheless, he would be neighborly and assist his friend with the drop off. As Deshaun was driving, he was trying to make sense of all of this. And 45 minutes later, he followed Lewis into a parking lot. This is where he would get out of his car and approach the car that Tashawn was driving, Yessenia's car. What Lewis did next only made Tashawn even more suspicious of what was going on. Lewis instructed Tashawn to get out of the car and started wiping everything down with cleaning supplies. It was at this moment that he realized something bad must have happened at the house. Now, it's unclear if his neighbor was aware of Lewis's criminal past or his gang affiliation, but it's safe to say if he suspected something heinous happened to his wife, he did not want to be the next person in line and kept quiet. This would be considered survival mode. After he was done, they ditched Yesenia's car in another location, got back in his car, and for the rest of the ride home, they were in complete silence. Lewis made a pit stop to the back of an apartment complex and discarded a few bags that had the cleaning supplies that Tashawn witnessed him using to wipe down Yesenia's car, and some additional items that he had taken out from her car as well for disposal. When the two men were about 10 minutes away from home, Lewis would be the one to break the silence. He slowly turned and looked at his neighbor and calmly said, "I just snapped." Tashawn asked to be let out of the car at the nearest corner store where he would grab a box of cigarettes and nearly smoke the entire pack before walking the rest of the way home. By this time, the sun was out and Yesenia's mother started to grow more and more concerned for her daughter's well-being. Normally, she would have called her by now because that's what they did just about every morning before work, but she hadn't heard anything from her. So she decided to try calling and texting several times, but there was no response each time. She even tried calling her daughter's job, but they informed her that she was scheduled to work from home that day, and so they weren't even expecting to see her in the office. So after that, she finally caved and decided to call Lewis, but just like her daughter, he too was not answering his phone. Worry was now being replaced with panic and fear. Felicita had one last place to call. She contacted the children's school to see if they had come in that day, and they would confirm that both Talia and her brother Elijah did not show up to school. At this point, she knew she needed to get authorities involved because Yesenia would never pull them from school because she valued education too much. It would take the kids being extremely sick before a decision like that would have been made. And being that she just saw them last night, she knew that something else was going on. So with the recent events that had just occurred, Felicita requested for a welfare check on her daughter and grandchildren. She ended up meeting authorities at the home of Yesenia and Lewis. Ironically enough, as soon as they arrived, just a few moments later, Lewis pulled up as well. Once they explained why they were there, he granted them access into the home. Once they entered, they were shocked to discover the house was in tip-top shape. There was nothing out of place, not even a speck of dust, and there were clothes that were neatly folded as if laundry had just been done. There was no sign of a struggle or crime, and more importantly, there was no sign of Yesenia or the kids. When asked where his family was, he simply stated he didn't know. And he assumed because they didn't find anything at the house that they had no choice but to leave. But what Lewis failed to realize was that he had an active warrant out for his arrest due to his antics from the day before at Yesenia's job. So police took him in for questioning. From there, it would take several attempts before Lewis divulged what finally happened to his family. According to Lewis's first confession, once everyone was back home, he and Yesenia talked things out and decided to remain together. To solidify their decision, he demanded to get her phone so he could text her now ex-lover Kevin and inform him of his new status. Kevin replied after in confusion, and that's when Lewis says Yessenia told Kevin that it wasn't her who messaged him, but it was Lewis. From there, he couldn't believe that Yessenia had the audacity to confirm this information to Kevin, especially in front of his face. This is where he wiped his hands clean of Yessenia, telling her that she could go and be with Kevin and that he was through with her. He then walked outside because he was upset, and this was around 1 a.m. At the same time, he spotted his neighbor Tashawn outside across the street. So he walked over, they chit-chatted for a little while, and then Tashawn went back inside his home and Lewis walked to his car where he slept overnight. He stated when he woke up the next morning, both his wife and the kids were gone. He assumed they must have left quietly at some point overnight as to go unnoticed because the car wasn't there, and figured he would eventually see them later. This was around 8 a.m. Police now had a new task of corroborating Lewis's confession. They had two places that they needed to go to confirm the events of what happened. They needed to pay a visit to Tashawn, the neighbor across the street, as well as his ex-wife's secret lover, Kevin. Authorities decided to start the investigation with Kevin. So they made their way over to his home, where initially he was apprehensive because he would have to discuss his relationship with Yessenia in front of his wife, who was oblivious to his extramarital affair. So whatever happens between Kevin and his wife was going to have to take a back seat because the task at hand was to try and find his missing mistress and her kids and ensure that he had nothing to do with their disappearances. So after interviewing Kevin and his wife, checking his alibi, and checking his phone records, they discovered a few text messages exchanged between him and Yessenia that not only cleared his name, but also contradicted Lewis's claims of reconciliation. Clearing Kevin was a breeze for detectives, but unfortunately for Lewis's neighbor Tashawn, his process would not go as smoothly. When Tashawn returned home from helping Lewis, he knew he needed to report what happened, but it would be a matter of when he could safely do it. And as luck would have it, shortly after returning home, just about an hour or so later, police would show up to his neighbor's home looking for his wife and stepkids. Once he learned that Lewis was taken into custody, it was only at that time that he felt safe enough to give a statement to police from his house, and he would later come in to give an official statement. After Tashawn gave his account of events, he went on a car ride with police, showing them the route that he took with Lewis, as well as the dump site for Yessenia's car and the apartment complex where he ditched a ton of evidence. Once they felt they had everything they needed from Tashawn, they circled back to Lewis that same night. Unfortunately for detectives, Lewis was not going to budge, and he would continue sticking to the same confession he originally gave them. By 3 a.m., detectives decided to call it quits and reconvene in the later morning. With refreshed eyes, detectives decided to take a different approach and show individual photos of his missing family, in which Lewis started to break down and give his second confession. This second confession involved an accomplice this time, and that person was none other than his neighbor, Tashawn Jackson. Now, most of the details were the same up until his interaction with Tashawn later that morning. According to Lewis's second confession, he saw his neighbor arriving home around 2 or 3 a.m. From there, they engaged in conversation, and this is where he invited him back to the house to play the PS3 in efforts to piss off Yessenia because she absolutely hated when he played the game system. Allegedly, once Yessenia saw what was going on, she became irate and demanded everyone, including Lewis, to leave the house. Lewis then said he refused to leave because he had every right to be there, and that's when Yessenia started attacking Lewis. So once this interaction began, Tashawn allegedly took the kids to another room to spare them from witnessing their parents fighting.
find them. We gotta do this, okay? I'm gonna talk you through this, alright? Because again, I want to make sure that we're doing this right. I want to make sure that we find out where these kids are and what happened, alright? You feel me? You follow? So I need you to tell me yes or no. I'm asking some questions.
I know you guys are not here to help me. Okay, I know that's what. I know this is not about me. Okay? You're right now. Let me speak. Let me speak. Okay? I know. And I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. And I know that y'all still gonna try to use it against me. Y'all still gonna try to make me like a murderer. That they murdered my family. But I'm gonna tell y'all, because I didn't murder my family. Will never murder my family. Never. I never put my hands on my wife. But I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I just wanna get it over with. This is me. I need a rest. Everything happened. Like I told God for the time that I went to the job. Went to when I left in 17. I came back to the front of the house. It was like maybe like 2, 3 in the morning. That's what they trying to put up. I told her I was having problems. He came over and talking to me. I said, fuck it. I know my wife hates when I play PS3. That's her most hated thing. She hates that. So I told her, fuck it, we don't go in the house and play. You know, I don't care if she get upset. So we walked in the room, I turned on the light. A lot of my stuff was packed up already in the house. But like that, some stuff that was packed up. So, by the door was the accident I told you about. So I saw it. And I moved it because I didn't want, her to be upset whenever they come at me with it. So I moved it. And I put it by the bathroom. So she got up when she saw things, so she started going off on me, whatever, and she told that she wanted everybody to leave. She wanted me to get out the house. I told her I didn't have to go. I was tired of her and that I was going to take her to divorce and everything. I didn't want to work nothing out with her anymore. I was tired of her playing these games with me. I was tired. I was doing nothing but the right by her. The best for her and the kids. Little me, I started arguing. She came at me. She grabbed me in the back. I got these scratches in the back here. She grabbed me from the back. She got upset. I got so tired of her grabbing on me. She fell on the floor with her neck looking at me. She couldn't breathe. She stopped breathing. She stopped breathing. She died looking at me. I couldn't help it. She was looking at me. Still like, no, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. The kids came out of the room because of the screams. So I said, so I'll take them over there. Please take them. They took them to the room. She came back. I beat her. Asked me if she was dead. I said, yeah. He went back to the bathroom. I heard pow, pow, pow. I went over there. He had the fucking thing in his hand. He hit my kids in the head. There was blood everywhere. I told him, what the fuck did he do? He told me. You can't go to jail for my wife's murder. The kids saw it. I said, oh my God. I said, sorry, you killed my kids. Oh my God, you killed my kids. You told me, man, oh God, so good, bro. Just get them, put them together or something, man. He said, house and everything. You can get rid of him. So he took the shovel and put him in the car, the truck. I helped him carry him. And he left and started cleaning everything up. Cleaned everything up. He came back and went to dump the rainbow. We dumped the rainbow. I dumped that stuff right there with him. I told him we had to go back because this piece here was gonna shorter than we could trump. And we went back together. That was it. I didn't hurt my babies, I swear. I didn't hurt my babies. Oh my God. Drop him off at 7-Eleven so he wouldn't be sore with me. But I went back home, I dressed for work. I couldn't go to work, I was just gonna go back home. That's when my mother-in-law and the sheriff was there. No way he did it though, I don't know. I'll tell you, I never know where he at. I don't know.
Dad, Tayshawn killed your kids. So,
Yeah, go with the axe. With the axe. I don't even know what side he went to. It was just so much blood everywhere. I saw my daughter take a lot of grabs.
this happened in the bathroom or something?
My bathroom. My bathroom.
Tayshawn bring both kids in the bathroom at the same time?
Yeah, I told her to take them over there. Come over there.
You know where the axe is?
I think he said it went in the water or something.
By your house?
On the highway. That's why he took me through the projects this effort to get rid of this stuff and those things, because that was the last stuff that I had on. He said it was best for me to get naked, so I got all the way down to my boxers, took this stuff off, and my boots, and put it all in the dumpster. He didn't even want to touch any of it. He used a plastic bottle to scoop the pans in, and when we ran around the corner, he threw the plastic bottle, the water bottle, on the grass.
Water bottle of what?
The water bottle that he had in his hand.
Take a drink in the water bottle?
Yes. That's all I know, Kurt. I swear to you. That's the truth. That's everything I know.
Can he tell you where he took them?
No, he wouldn't tell me. He said it was best. I don't know.
Did you see Tayshawn hit your kids?
No, I heard the clothes real loud. When I went over there, it was shaking.
Both of your children?
I grabbed my son, his whole skull with in pieces, and we just crossed. Oh, baby. I couldn't do anything. Arguing with you, real white. That's how I buried everything at one time. I cursed. I cursed to death. She couldn't breathe. I see her. She died looking at me. Baby, trying to do CPR and everything. That's why I never hit her. Never hit her because I know my strength. I know my strength.
Detectives were now playing a game of ping pong between new confessions and corroborating new details. So you could imagine when detectives informed Tashawn of the new testimony, he was literally shocked. He couldn't believe that his neighbor, who he also considered his friend at one point, not only involved him in moving a vehicle after a heinous crime was committed, but now was implicating him in a murder of children. So Tashawn yet again went into survival mode. He reiterated the story verbatim without a single detail changing. However, because of the new claims from Lewis, authorities were forced to check out his story. This meant doing a search on Tashawn's home, interviewing people he knew, verifying his alibi, as well as phone records and GPS locations during the window of opportunity. And after everything was finally said and done, all signs pointed to being cleared. Tashawn was not involved in anything other than what was already discussed. Detectives were truly running out of options, but decided to pull a wild card and reach out to the DA that used Lewis as a witness in one of her cases. They hoped that maybe by seeing her, that would take him back to the days where he wanted to be a better person, but unfortunately, not even she could get him to confess. On the last and final attempt, detectives decided to just start over and see if maybe he would slip up somewhere along the way. Within 5 minutes of interrogation, Lewis started complaining of stomach issues and asked to go to the bathroom. After returning, another 5 minutes and another bathroom request. This would continue for approximately 15 minutes. And on his third trip to the bathroom, he ended up staying on the toilet. So detectives decided they're going to continue the interview from the other side of the bathroom door. At some point, Lewis became frustrated and was no longer cooperative. And instead of stating that he didn't know where his family was as he had been doing the entire time, he changed his story yet again and stated, "I will never tell you where they are." Immediately following that statement, Lewis leapt in front of the bathroom door, barricading himself inside. The next thing detectives heard was glass shattering from the other side of the door. They immediately bulldozed the door because they knew he was trying to take the cowardly way out. Unfortunately for Lewis, his attempt was unsuccessful as the detectives were able to break through the door and tase him. He was then immediately rushed to the hospital where he would continue to remain silent. At this point, test results also came back regarding blood splatter that was found in the house. It was confirmed to be that of Talia. Talia's blood splatter particularly illustrated that she was running toward the bathroom for safety in hopes of escaping her attacker, aka Lewis. Detectives were through with his antics and ready to take him to trial. They planned on seeking the death penalty. This was simply because he murdered children to cover up another murder. There's no place on earth for people like that. Unfortunately for Yessenia's family, it would take 4 years before he would see his day in court. As the Suarez family waited, the search for the bodies of Yessenia, Talia, and Elijah continued. With all hands on deck, they would search high and low only to come back empty handed each time. Birthdays would be celebrated every year with a balloon release to honor the loved ones that they hoped to eventually be reunited with one day. Once trial proceedings began, things started to go downhill for Lewis, and quickly. In addition to Yessenia's mother, their neighbor Tashawn and her ex-lover Kevin testified for the prosecution. These were key witnesses that could easily diminish Lewis's character. The trial lasted a total of 4 long, excruciating weeks, and after everything was said and done, it only took the jury one day to come back with a verdict. They found Luis Toledo guilty on the charge of murder in the second degree for Yessenia Suarez, and guilty again on the charge of murder in the first degree for both Talia and her younger brother Elijah Otto. Lewis barely escaped getting put to death, as the year prior to his sentencing, Florida had just changed the law requiring the jury to be unanimous in the decision of death. It was 10-2. So instead, the former gang member was charged with 3 life sentences plus an additional 5 years for tampering with evidence. And just when you thought the Suarez family could go to somewhat of some normalcy again, tragedy would strike once more. On January 16, 2022, Jonathan Suarez, Yessenia's brother, went missing. Jonathan had a hard time coping with the loss of his sister Yessenia, and although he did move on in life, get married, and have a child of his own, the hurt he had over his missing sister, niece, and nephew was unbearable. He made a comment to his wife stating that he needed to go out and find his sister. It was so sudden, as if something triggered him, and unfortunately, that was also the last time anyone saw or heard from him as well. Unfortunately for Felicita, this was something she was all too familiar with. The family geared up to post missing person flyers in hopes that the outcome would be much different than that of his sister, Yessenia. Soon after Jonathan was reported missing, his truck was found. However, it would take an additional 8 days before they found Jonathan himself.
34-year-old Jonathan Suarez was first reported missing last Sunday when his truck was found in a West Orange County subdivision after being involved in 2 crashes. The Apopka Police Department confirming today that a recently discovered body has been positively identified as Suarez. Now, Suarez is the brother of Yessenia Suarez, who disappeared back in 2013 along with her 2 children. Her husband, Luis Toledo, was convicted of murder in all 3 deaths.
It was also reported that he had been involved in 2 car crashes shortly before his disappearance. More than likely, Jonathan may have been spiraling at the time of his death. There hasn't been any word on whether foul play was involved with his death or not. These updates come from several outlets dated between January 24th and January 26th of 2022. No further updates have been released, and at this time, his case is still considered active. As for Yessenia, Talia, and Elijah, as of this year, 2023, Yessenia would have been around 38 years old, Talia would have been 19, and Elijah would have been 18. Their bodies were never found. The amount of grief and tragedy the Suarez family had to continuously endure is unimaginable, and my condolences goes out to the family. Although vows may have been broken, it never constitutes someone losing their life. And in this case, Luis Toledo could not accept the new reality he was facing. If you have a case request you would like me to cover, go ahead and drop it down in the comment section or utilize one of the other methods to reach out to me that's mentioned in the description box. I want to thank you again for listening to the story of Yessenia, Talia, and Elijah. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to continue watching more cases, there should be a playlist on the screen you can click on, where you can binge watch all of the other stories that have been covered by this channel thus far. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.